Should have known something was wrong when Ayo insisted on driving me home that night. His hands were shaky on the steering wheel, and he kept glancing at me like he was sizing me up for something. But I was tired, emotionally drained, and honestly, just relieved he wasn't yelling anymore. The last thing I expected was to wake up beneath the cold, damp earth, struggling to breathe while the sound of death being shoveled above me filled my ears. My name is Yemi, and I live in Ibadan. I am 24 years old, and at the time, I was working as a receptionist at a small law firm in Bodija. Life was simple: go to work, church on Sundays, and hanging out with my best friend, Tola, when we both had time. I met Ayo at a friend's birthday party at a small bar near Dugbe. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He had come with a friend of a friend. But the moment our eyes met across the room, it was like the rest of the world faded away. He smiled at me, that kind of confident smile that makes you feel like you are the most important person in the room. He walked over, and before I could even get my thoughts together, he said, "I have been looking for you." I laughed. "Really? You have never seen me before, have you?" "Maybe not, but I knew I would meet you one day," he said. That was how it started. Ayo was the definition of perfect at first. He worked at a bank, dressed well, and always carried himself with quiet confidence. He called me every morning to check if I had eaten, showed up with lunch at work, and took me on dates that felt like scenes out of romantic movie. My friends liked him too at first. Tola even joked that I had hit the jackpot. "Yemi, holds this one title. Fine boy, responsible job, no wahala," she would say, laughing. And for a while, it felt like I had found the one, but the red flags started showing up slowly. First, it was the little comments. "Why didn't you pick my call? Why did you go after work? And I told you we were supposed to have a dinner date. Who is that guy in your office you keep laughing with?" I thought it was sweet at first. He was just being protective, right? But then it got worse. One evening, I was out with Tola and some other friends when Ayo called. I didn't answer because it was loud and I didn't want to be rude. He called again, then again. When I finally picked up and said I would call him later, he hung up without saying a word. The next morning, he showed up at my apartment. "Where were you last night?" "I told you I was with Tola and you couldn't answer my call." "Ayo, you're overreacting." That was the first time he slapped me. It wasn't hard, just enough to shock me. He immediately pulled me into his arms and started apologizing. "I am sorry, Yemi. I don't know what came over me. I just loved you so much, and the thought of losing you drives me crazy." I forgave him. He was just stressed. He loved me. That's what I told myself. 3 months into the relationship, I started feeling strange. Nausea in the mornings, sudden exhaustion, and a growing sensitivity to smells. Tola was the one who told me to take a pregnancy test. When the test showed 2 lines, I sat on the bathroom floor, shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was scared, but also hopeful. Ayo would step up. He was responsible. We would figure it out together, I told myself. When I told him, he was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Are you sure it's mine?" I couldn't believe he even said that. "Of course it's yours." He sighed and rubbed his face. Then he said, "We can't have this baby." "What are you talking about?" "We are not ready, Yemi." I am not getting rid of this baby, I replied. That was when the coldness crept into his eyes. He stood up, shook his head, and walked out. For 2 weeks, he ignored me. When he finally called, he acted like nothing had happened. He invited me to dinner, saying we needed to talk and work things out. I was just so relieved to hear from him that I agreed. Ayo picked me up in his car that evening. He was quiet as he drove through Ibadan's dark streets. We passed several restaurants, but he kept driving. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Just trust me," he said. He drove toward a quiet area where a lot of new buildings were being constructed. He pulled up near an unfinished house. The place was dark and quiet. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What are we doing here?" "Calm down," he said. I hesitated, but I got out. He took my hand and led me toward a large pit in the ground. My heart was pounding now. I could barely breathe. "Ayo, what is this?" That's when I saw him reach into his pocket and pulled out a rag. He grabbed me from behind and shoved it into my mouth. I fought hard, kicking and screaming, but he was too strong. I felt myself losing consciousness. The last thing I saw was his cold, emotionless face as he pushed me into the pit. Then the death started falling. I screamed and clawed at the earth, but the death kept coming. My chest started to tighten. My body went numb. The whole world started fading. I woke up to the sound of voices and the feeling of rough hands pulling me out of the death. My body felt broken. My chest burned. My eyes were swollen shut. A security guard was shouting, "She is alive! She is alive!" I passed out again. When I woke up in the hospital, the guard was sitting by my bed. His name was Mr. Ade. He told me how he had seen Ayo driving to the construction site late at night. He thought it was suspicious and decided to check. He saw Ayo shoveling dirt into the pit. He waited until he drove off, then ran to the site and dug me out. Ayo was arrested 2 days later. He denied everything at first. He told the police that I had fallen into the pit. But when the police found his fingerprints on the shovel and the security guard testified, the truth came out. At the trial, I sat in the courtroom and listened to Ayo's lawyer try to paint him as a man under stress, but the evidence was too strong. Ayo was sentenced to life in prison for attempted murder. I lost the baby. The doctor said the trauma was too much for my body to handle. I cried for days when I found out. It felt like part of me had died. I spent months in therapy. Nightmares haunted me for a long time, waking up in the dark feeling the weight of death pressing down on my chest. But slowly, I started to heal. Ayo thought he had buried me forever, but I survived. And now, I tell my story because I need people to know evil sometimes wears the face of the one you love. Thanks for staying to the end of the story. Please like, subscribe, and share.